struggles. This went wrong, that happened. Oh, these people didn't love me. I'm not good enough at that. The people didn't teach me that properly. No wonder I became a drug. Because, like, and curiously, there was a sort of it was something quite deliberate, in fact, about becoming chemically dependent. Like, I saw glamorous figures like that were drug addicts. I thought, oh, I'll be one of them then, because I don't fit in around here. I'm not like the people I'm growing up around. At least that's what I thought. I don't know. I might have been. But, like, you know, so I took that identity. Now what I feel, I suppose the transition is that I now feel that all of the things, it's one way of really demonstrating this, I think that's clear, Tony, is the difference in the relationship I'm currently in. Okay. In relationships I've been in the past, I sort of think they like that I was a little bit crazy and wild and that I might do something mad and get in trouble. Like,
so it reinforced it.
Yeah, they did reinforce it.
Because it meant love to you, or at least sexuality or sensuality.
Yeah, like I'm cool and I'm dangerous. Oh, the Russell, he don't care. He'll get out and just smash stuff up and do something weird and mental. And I used to like to be that guy. And people, it seemed like they somewhat lionised it. You know, if you're an entertainer and you're like, you know, I used to be I remember this thing when I was thrown out of drama school. I was like 20. It was my big dream.
Wait, how did you get thrown out of drama school?
Yeah, too much drama. Ironically, no, not that drama. That's enough. Get out. Like it was from showing off. You know, and that, you know, and like.
So it was disruptive to other people.
Smashing stuff. I got arrested a couple of times towards the end of it, and I had to call them. My one phone call was to the drama school, and and I was taking drugs there and I was selling drugs there, and it was like I was not a good student. But I tell you what, they put up with all of it as long as the acting was good enough. And for a while, the acting was good enough, but once that dropped, you're finished. And that's a lesson to anybody who's got some skills. The minute you're not, you know, providing the collateral, you're unless people like love you and will put up with you. So like that, they lionised that kind of behaviour. But eventually, the point came where they didn't anymore. Like,
so did that make you look to change the narrative, or still no?
I carried on.
You carried on for some time until the pain was just too much.
More years, yeah. Before it became like, I began to recognise you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. This is in the way of it. If that doesn't go, so that's why it was incremental, because it wasn't a full commitment. It wasn't like I'm willing to give myself to the great unknown. It was all right. I'll stop taking drugs in order to get that.
And what was that in those days? What was the motive back then?
Power, fame,
interesting,
money, attention. Not for like money as in spending. I just wanted to not feel worthless, and I thought like if I could do that, then I'm not worthless because those people aren't worthless.
And how long did it take before you realized none of those were going to fill you up? You first had to maximize them to some extent. It sounds like.
Yeah, slow. This is what I mean, because I sometimes think of myself as clever, but I recognise when I look at my history that I'm not, because the behaviour is not clever. Because when I was like the addiction, like the sex addiction went on for too long, like that habit and that behaviour. Because it's like if you're a male heterosexual sleeping with willing partners, that goes on for a long, long while before anyone will go, do you want to stop that and think about the possible consequences to yourself and others? It took me a very, very long while. So like, but when I think of my relationship, the way I was going to sort of recognise or take the temperature of my transition was that my wife Laura, she just loves me as like a normal bloke. She just like, she's not, I'll tell her, oh my God, it was amazing, Tony Robbins, I went there and there was some witchcraft at the beginning. Like I'll tell her all of that, but she just like, oh, you know, she likes all of that, but she's not fascinated by it. She's not fascinated, she's not like, ooh, she's just like, oh cool. She's interested in, there's a part of me that's, and I'm sure surely there is with you, that is not all of this stuff. No. It's quiet and it's sort of tender and vulnerable.
Yes.
And there's a place for that. I didn't have a place for that before.
Yeah, my wife, the greatest gift she gave me, she didn't fall in love with Tony Robbins. She wasn't involved with Tony Robbins. She wasn't a fan of Tony Robbins. She fell in love with just me. And I felt that.
What
and
relief.
That was a beautiful, unbelievable relief. You know, even for me, because I felt the different pressure in those stages of my life. The pressure was I got to have the answer all the time for everybody. Make everybody's life perfect every moment. And, you know, if somebody asked me something, I had to have the answer. I couldn't say, I don't know, let me think that one through. You know? And so, you know.
It's complicated, I don't know.
You know, it shifted.
Toss a coin.
Yeah, that's perfect. So this stage for you brought greater humility, it would be fair to say?
Yeah.
And how would you define humility?
Well, the dictionary defines humility as awareness of your relative insignificance.
Oh yes, it's the antidote to the culture of significance that we live in today. That's interesting.
Which is that's not that bad a thing, but limitless space, time beyond comprehension, you know, all of the greats start to slip away in that context, huh?
Yeah.
And so awareness of your relative insignificance, but it also for me means a sort of a sense of being on the earth, a sense of I'm here, rather than out there. I feel like sacrificed a lot of the earth stuff so I could trip out, you know? Like, if I got no connections to any people, then everything, I used to be like, before an audience, I used to think, well, this is all I got is you. All I've got is you, so you can have everything. You can have everything. It's still in there a little bit, and it surely must be in you for you to do them hours and to break them machines at them scientists to try and evaluate your heart rate on. There must be a little bit of you. It's like, this is where I live. And there's some questions that I want to ask you on.
I'm glad. I'm looking forward. When we're done here, we're going to flip this thing around. You're going to interview me, so you'll have to watch his podcast later on, or hear his podcast later on. Anybody listening now. The next step is an interesting one because you make a list of all the persons you've harmed on step 8, and you become willing to make amends with them. Tell me how you interpret that, and was that an easy or difficult step with you? And how do you decide who you're going to make amends with and who not to? Because that's part of it as well, because sometimes it can make it worse.
Yes, prepare to apologise to everything affected by your being so f***ed up. That's separate from the actual doing it. That's separate. At this moment you prepare, so you draw a list of them. In fact, you've already got the list because you're step 4.
You did it earlier, step 4, yeah. Cool. But you're re-looking at it and reassociating to it, making it more real so that you're ready to act on it. Is that really the difference there?
Well, you're actually looking at a different facet of it because you'll have gone like, you know, my dad, because like, you know.
Oh, the blaming mode.
Yeah, instead of the blame thing. Well, what did my dad have to go through? Oh, right, he had to put up with all of that.
Step in his shoes.
So you look at it, it's precisely. So you go back and you think, well, am I willing to make amends to that person? Am I willing to make amends to MTV that I used their cab account freely to pick up pizzas, drugs, all sorts of things? Like, you know, like instead of it, you meant to just go to work and back in that cab. That's all I was meant to do. You know, or like people that I like misbehaved with when I was a kid at school. Like, are you willing to? You become willing to. And there's some people you go, no, I'll never make amends to them. Them, it was their fault, you know. But you have to get this, so there's a lot of forgiveness in this, because I suppose on a deeper level, Tony, it's the recognition that whether or not external objects exist is still up for question. They exist in your consciousness. So if you're willing to sort of forgive them, perhaps to a degree they can dissipate, and certainly you can navigate your way through your own consciousness differently. So once you've made that list, obviously it strongly relates to step 9.
Right, where you actually do it.
Where you actually do it.
Yes. And with that, how do you decide who to do that with and not to?
You take the advice of your mentor. You go, right, I'm thinking of doing this. And you go, like, no, you don't do it. An example of making amends that would make a situation worse would be, hey, listen, I'm so sorry, I was having an affair with your wife. And the guy doesn't know. That's not helping anybody. Yes. You know, so the purpose of it is, the point of the amends, in a sense, is not actually about them. It's oddly about you, as the word amend suggests. Amend your path through life. Yes. You become different now. So, like, a very simple example was a person that I worked with, like with the aforementioned MTV account, even though this is one of the more minor things on that list, and it's an example I use in the book. I used to have free access to this cab account. I used it sort of